everybody, welcome to the show, Around the Nation, right here, TYT Nation. I'm your host, Jeff Waldorf. Got a great show for you guys today. It's just me. Normally, Ron's in here on Mondays, and that's why we usually start at a later time. But, of course, Ron could not be here today. He's currently in Mexico. I don't know why he's in Mexico, but he is in Mexico. And I hope they let him back in. You never know. Now, of course, I'm referencing the recent story where a NASA scientist actually got stopped at the border and from Canada. And they were like, we need to see your phone. We need you to unlock your NASA phone so we can see whether or not you're American enough to come back into America. This is insanity. But again, insanity is what we deal with every day here on the show. The new insanity that is now the new normal in the Trump administration. So that's where Ron is. Again, I hope they let him back in the country. I hope they don't check our YouTube account. Oh man, that guy's a super lib. Can't let him back in. No way, dude. Can't let this guy back in the country. You crazy. You stay right here. Oh, hey, Mexico. Probably not all that bad. Get some tacos, some good cerveza, and have some good times. But of course, we do want Ron to come back. I think, and I'm not sure yet, he might be back later on this week. If not, of course, he'll be back next Monday for sure. 100%. He'll be back next week. If he's not stopped at the border. Maybe he can smuggle himself in on the back of a truck. I feel bad saying that with Ron not here to make a counter joke. But anyway, hey man, the wall hasn't been built yet. Not built yet. So he's got a chance. But anyway, seriously though, thank you guys for joining me for the next hour right here around the nation. We've got a great lineup of stories as usual. And of course, the best stories and progressive political commentary that you can find here on the web. So please sit back, enjoy the show, share the video, share the live stream. Give us a like, leave us your comments, all that awesome stuff, and it's definitely appreciated. Also, another thing, super appreciated, patrons. You guys rock. In fact, I've got 2 new patron shoutouts to give to you guys today. Let me pull that up. We have Isaac Gage and Ellen Gaynor. So Isaac, Ellen, you guys rock. Thank you guys for supporting truly independent, progressive media. If you want to support Around the Nation, patreon.com/TYT Nation. All right. Anyway, let's give you a breakdown of what we're going to talk about today. We've got Trump's approval ratings. We're going to get into that flaming dumpster fire. Then we've got another flaming dumpster fire in the National Security Council. More internal leaks from different people in the NSC describing how terrible it is. Great. Then we've got Jim Webb, the guy who killed a man, is out to try to figure out what exactly is wrong with the Democratic Party. And he talked about that, of course, yesterday on some of the Sunday shows with Chuck Todd. So we're going to talk about that. Then we had, I was going to talk about a Bernie Sanders town hall that was going to happen tonight, actually, in West Virginia. But, well, I'm still going to talk about it. But it looks like that town hall mysteriously canceled. We're going to talk about that. We've got Bernie Sanders' response on that. Then, of course, the Obamacare alternative. There's a Republican senator, Mike Lee, that accidentally spills the beans. Uh-oh. And then we've got voter fraud. We actually have a verified punished case of voter fraud. Of somebody who is non-citizen voting in our elections. Oh, dear God, the Republicans, they were right. Twisty twist. We're going to get to that. So that's a good story. Anyway, so that's the stories. That's what we're going to cover here as we go around the nation. So again, stick around for the next hour because we're going to get into these stories. We're going to have some fun. Let's start out with the raging dumpster fire that is the Trump administration. All right. let's see. How low can Donald Trump's approval rating go? Already, he starts out as one of the most unpopular presidents to ever take office. I mean, his first couple of weeks, he's only been in for a month, and already he has really low approval ratings. Usually it takes a while of not doing anything or doing terrible things or doing not what you say you're going to do in order to get to this low of an approval rating. And I'll get to the numbers in a minute. But he has achieved the impossible, being the most unpopular president to ever come into office. Now, this is according to a new Gallup poll that was taken. Only 40% of Americans approve of the job that the president is doing. So 40% a job approval rating. Now, there is a 55% job disapproval rating. So that's a big majority of Americans saying, I really don't like what Donald Trump's doing. He sucks. Well, I said that. I don't know if they said that. But they certainly don't like what he's doing. They certainly don't like how he's handling this job. Now, the results, of course, are based on a 3-day rolling average. Now, the daily results are based on interviews with about 1,500 adults, and the margin of error is 3%. So it could be 37%, or it could be 43%. Either way, disaster. Absolute disaster. So that's what we have. Now, of course, the Hill notes that the president's approval ratings have been dropping slightly since he assumed office. At the beginning of his presidency, Trump had about a 45% job approval rating, and that's, of course, an average of all the different polls. Some of them had him down as low as 37%. Others had him, of course, at 45%. No, even with that, that's really low. For an incoming president, let me give you some context here. President Obama, when he was elected in 2008, had a 70% approval rating. Let's go back further. George W. Bush, when in 2000, he came in with a 66% job approval rating. George W. Bush is the only other guy that got elected with a minority of the popular vote. Same thing as Trump. But even George W. Bush was much more popular as an incoming president than Donald Trump. Disaster. That is a disaster for an incoming president. Now, again, to put Trump in contrast with this, his approval rating is essentially lower than Obama's lowest rating. Obama's lowest rating happened in the 6th year. In the 6th year, full disclosure, that's usually when people are sick of the president, when he's 6 years in. And that's when they usually get the lowest approval ratings. Barack Obama's lowest approval rating was about 42.5%. Now, of course, all presidents go through times where their approval ratings are very low. Again, 6th year. And, of course, sometimes they go through a period of where their approval ratings are actually really good. I mean, for example, after 2001, specifically 9/11, George Bush's job approval rating jumped to 90%. 90%. Now, of course, he left office in 2008 with 22%. So just to show you how this can swing wildly depending on what actually happens. So there's your context, right? Now, Trump's highest, 45%. Now it's 40%, and it's dropping. And look, there's evidence that a lot of people really are not happy with this guy. There are protests everywhere. Not only that, but there are a lot of people that are pissed off at Republicans going to these town halls and demonstrating. I mean, you have all sorts of different people coming out against him, whether it be the Hollywood types and just regular people that are going to these town halls and telling people, hey, we are not happy with the direction the country is going. We're not happy with what Donald Trump said he's going to do. So we are pissed off, and we're not going to take it anymore. And of course, this is because some of the decisions that he's made that have gone contrary to what he actually ran on. For example, he said, we're going to drain the swamp. We're going to drain the swamp. You know what he did? He filled the swamp full of Goldman Sachs. Come on, man. He also nominated the most unqualified Secretary of Education, I think, and has ever been nominated. Remember, Betsy DeVos never went to public school, never managed anything. Not just a school, she never managed anything. She has zero job experience. The only thing that she's done is, oh, look, she gave $200 million to the Republican Party. She bought that seat. It was purchased. If that's not cronyism, if that's not the very thing Donald Trump said he was going to fight against, I don't know what is. She literally bought a seat. Not only that, but he hasn't done anything to actually fight the political establishment or the global financial elite. I mean, the one good thing that we can point to is that he stopped the TPP. That's great. At least I give him credit for that. But that's it. As far as stopping the global financial elite, oh, he stopped him all right by sticking him in his cabinet. I mean, Steven Mnuchin, Gary Cohn, Stephen Bannon, former Goldman Sachs guy, and many more. You've got to be kidding me. He filled the swamp. Now, look, I'm going to go on a bit of a speculation here, since we're on the whole issue of poll numbers. I've been having these thoughts, right? Where, I mean, we look at George W. Bush's numbers. I mentioned 90%. What made his popularity go up that high? Well, it was after the September 11th terrorist attacks. It gets you thinking, what if that happens again? What's going to happen with Donald Trump's popularity? If it could save the inept George W. Bush administration, at least for a short while, what would it do to a Donald Trump administration? And look, I hate to say this because I hope it never, ever happens, right? I hope we never have another terrorist attack. I hope I'm wrong. I hope it never happens. Jesus Christ. But look, the danger of Donald Trump and Steve Bannon is that he's not exactly going out of his way to prevent another terrorist attack. And Steve Bannon, and look, I'll get into this in another segment, but Steve Bannon should scare the shit out of everybody because he actually does want a conflict. I mean, you look into some of the things that Steve Bannon actually believes needs to happen. He wants another war. He believes in some scary shit. We need another war, he says, to bring fundamental change. The type of change that he wants to see. Like a new beginning or some crazy stuff. Oh boy. And look, man, if the Trump administration continues to antagonize Muslims, the Mexicans, Iran, or China, right? He could have one. And if we end up having a war with any one of those, we all lose. Scary. And again, those George W. Bush numbers, 90% after 9/11. Anybody who went against the president, traitor, you are un-American. Remember what happened to the Dixie Chicks? Remember what happened to anybody who spoke out against the war and said, hey, you know what, this is wrong. Oh, scary, scary, man. And of course, on George W. Bush, this is an attack that he could have prevented, but he did not. He didn't even try to prevent it. Oh, bin Laden, poised to strike America. Oh, okay, well, good, great. We're going to ignore that piece of intel. Oh, they attacked the World Trade Center? Oh, crap. And again, with Steve Bannon, he might actually want something like that. And again, that's the scary thing about this whole thing. But anyway, that speculation aside, based on what I know from Steve Bannon and some of the recent stuff that's come out about him, and I'm going to do, again, something a little bit more in-depth about that, scary. But for right now, Donald Trump's numbers are awful. Disaster. And I do wonder how low they can actually go. For that, we'll have to wait and see. We'll wait and see what he does and whether or not his own supporters start to get sick of him. And we've already seen a little bit of evidence of that. But there are a group of supporters, the people who wanted to break up the establishment, once they all get on the same page that, oh, he is the establishment, then, well, We'll see. We'll see what happens. All right. Now, let's get into the dysfunctional National Security Council. In fact, actually, I want to take a second here. Just a moment. All right, sorry about that. I needed to cough. All right. Now, the New York Times recently did a look inside of the Trump administration's National Security Council, and what they found is that it is deeply dysfunctional. And of course, this doesn't come directly from the New York Times. They just wrote about it. Where the information comes from is actually people who had worked inside, current and former employees or members of the National Security Council. So that's where the information is coming from. Of course, you've got more anonymous leaks. Now, part of the article deals with Michael Flynn, who actually might be on his way out. Now, the article notes that the National Security Advisor, Michael Flynn, has hunkered down since investigations began looking into what he told the Russian ambassador to the United States about the lifting of sanctions imposed in the last days of the Obama administration. Now, again, that might be a bit of a conflict of interest, a bit of a problem here. Now, it also notes whether or not he misled Vice President Mike Pence about the about the context of those conversations, about what he actually said. So that's interesting. Now, the New York Times notes that his survival on the job may hang in the balance. So, although Mr. Trump suggested to reporters aboard Air Force One on Friday that he was unaware of the latest questions swirling around Mr. Flynn's dealings with Russia, aides said over the weekend in Florida, where Mr. Flynn accompanied the president and Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, that Mr. Trump was closely monitoring the reaction to Mr. Flynn's conversations. There are transcripts of a conversation and at least one phone call recorded by American intelligence agencies that wiretap foreign diplomats, which may determine Mr. Flynn's future. So, look, again, there's all sorts of questions going on with Michael Flynn. And so, look, it looks like this guy might be on the way out. Now, the other part of that is that Donald Trump is watching his own team. He's micromanaging, and it said something in a Politico article that we covered last Friday, where Trump, when you get into trouble with Mr. Trump, he micromanages you. He watches the things that you're doing. So right now he's watching both Sean Spicer and Michael Flynn. Now, the Times notes that some of his staff members, in response to being watched or the possibility of being watched, notes that some members have turned to encrypted communications to talk with their colleagues after hearing Mr. Trump's top advisors are considering, quote, an insider threat program that could result in monitoring cell phones and emails for leaks. So, yeah. Again, so far seems kind of dysfunctional based on what we know. Now, again, this coincides with that piece I did on Friday from Politico, showing a visibly tired staff that is essentially paranoid and sits and fights over favor for with Trump. Oh no, I didn't mess that up. It was that guy. It was Bob. Bob screwed up. So I'm the one that you should not punish for this happening. Or Sean messed up. So look, they're jockeying, they're fighting for position. Now some of that is of course politics, right? Now there's other stuff in this that is not quite politics. It actually stretches beyond what is normal when you have a new administration coming in. Now the article notes that what is happening under the Trump White House is different than any other administration. And not just because of Mr. Trump's Twitter foreign policy. The Times notes, two officials said that at one recent meeting, there was talk of feeding suggested Twitter posts to the president so the council staff would have greater influence. Fascinating. And look, they have to do that because the guy doesn't want to do his briefings. What he does when he's there is that he signs executive orders, he watches TV, and then tweets. But you know what? Hey, that's okay because...
You know, I'm like a smart person.
He's a smart person. He's a smart person. Now, again, this information comes from current and former staff. Now, they do not want to be named for fear of reprisals. Again, this is something that's consistent with the Trump administration, because if anybody crosses him or anybody goes behind his back, well, there's hell to pay. You go and talk to the press and he knows about it, you're done. Now, there are some of the staff that worked on the National Security Council that were uncomfortable working under Donald Trump, so they left. They went back to their old they went back to their old jobs, essentially. Now, because of that, well, there's a lot less people there. There's actually a big giant hole in the staff, and they don't have enough experienced people there. Again, leading to more dysfunction. Now, many of those who remain, who see themselves as apolitical civil servants, they say have been disturbed by displays of overt partisanship. Now, for example, at an all-hands meeting about 2 weeks into the new administration, Katie McFarland, the Deputy National Security Advisors, told the group that it needed to, quote, make America great again. Of course, that is Donald Trump's his slogan that he ran in his campaign. Okay, well, shouldn't you be making America great again? Shouldn't that be what you're doing instead of talking about it? I mean, you're in power now, so do it. Now, new Trump appointees are now carrying coffee mugs with that same campaign slogan into meetings with foreign counterparts, which is a little weird. It's like blatant commercialism. But see, it kind of makes sense. Again, we know who we're dealing with. Donald Trump loves this sort of blatant commercialism. He loves to see his name everywhere. So obviously, and I don't know if this is an edict from on high, or from one of his advisors that are like, hey, Trump likes to see his name on things, so let's put his name on everything. Even going into meetings, let's use Trump cups. It'll be great. Trust me, it'll be tremendous. And by the way, that is kind of a great way of telling who the true team players are. I mean, you can tell by outward displays of loyalty to the Donald Trump brand, because that's essentially what it is. See, Donald Trump's not just a person, he's pretty much a corporation. We have a corporation running the White House. Everything he does for the benefit of his own family brand. And so if you're not a company man, if you're not showing up with your Make America Great Again mug or hat, well, then you got to go, man. You're out of there. So, of course, everybody has it because they don't want to lose their job. But it is deeply disturbing. Now, in the article, it also notes that nervous staff members recently met late at a bar a few blocks from the White House and had talked about purging their social media accounts of any suggestion of anti-Trump sentiments. Again, that's a little scary. Now, there is one piece in here that is actually kind of fun. Now, it's how Trump likes his meetings. Now, it says Ms. McFarland also often draws on her television experience to make clear to officials that they need to make their points in council meetings quickly, and she signals when to wrap up. Now, of course, that's because Donald Trump doesn't have an attention span. He can't sit more than like 5 minutes without paying attention to something else, without picking up his phone and wanting to tweet. No, Mr. Trump, you got to pay attention to this, okay? But I'm bored. I want to watch Fox News. Come on, I want to see what they're saying about me on CNN. You know he watches it. You know he watches Saturday Night Live. Of course he does. He can't help himself. So, of course, he doesn't want to sit in these boring meetings where they discuss policy. In fact, it said that while Mr. Obama liked policy option papers that were 3 to 6 single-spaced pages. That's a lot of information, right? Council and staff members are now being told to keep papers to a single page with lots of graphics and maps. One official said, quote, "The president likes maps." Now, you go from 3 to 6 detailed pages of policy to 1 page filled with maps and graphics. Hey, look, I've been hearing that Donald Trump kind of has a hard time reading. I don't know if that has to do anything with it, but it could. I'm just saying. Look, why not just go the extra step and make a pop-up book like you would give to a little kid. Here you go, Donald. Here's a pop-up book. Oh, man. Obama has details. Trump wants a picture book. And look, this would be incredibly comical if it weren't the most powerful man in the world. He's a step away from the nukes. Oh. And look, everything else, this administration is a bit of a disaster. And look, I do have to note that a lot of administrations do go through rocky starts. Sure. And we'll give that, we'll give that consideration as well. But seriously, they really don't have their shit together. This right now is the most inept authoritarian disaster of a presidency that we've seen, and it's only been a month. I'm starting to think that he's not going to last 4 years. And look, wait until the Republican Party turns on him. You don't think it will happen? It's becoming more and more likely every day. That's my opinion. Hear me now, quote me later. But we'll see, man. Only time will tell. Disaster. All right. Let's go to Jim Webb. It's a fun segment here. Former Democratic candidate Jim Webb thinks he knows what's wrong with the Democratic Party. Now, he explained on Sunday in an interview with NBC's Meet the Press that there are a few points that the Democrats have messed up, and actually here's one of them. Let's take a look at this video.
On the Democrats, first of all, they're looking at 2018. And they don't have a message. They don't have a
Speak to them as they, by the way.
Well, you know.
You don't say we. Is there a reason?
I'm not in the system right now. I'm over here with you right
Fair
now.
enough.
I've spent
Okay.
a bit of my life as a writer and a journalist, and it's a good place to be able to make these observations.
Then welcome back and finish the observation.
Well, you know, there is a campaign going on the Hill, in the media, in the academia, to personally discredit not only Donald Trump, but the people who are around him. And you know, the end result of this really is trying, and to slow down the process, by the way, you and I were talking a minute ago about the confirmation process, is slow it down so that by 18, when the Democrats are very vulnerable, particularly in the Senate, there will not be a record of accomplishment that they can run against.
Okay, so there's a couple of things in there, right? He's actually right when it comes to the Democrats don't really have a direction, and they're just waiting for 2018. And what they're doing is that they're just going and doing character politics. Okay, I get that, right? And I get that that's actually the wrong way to go. So he makes a point there. They don't have a direction. And right now, there is a fight going on for the DNC chair that would actually decide that direction. Now, will they go with Tom Perez and continue with the establishment politics, which I think is a terrible idea because it's a continuation of the status quo that hasn't exactly worked? Or will they go with Keith Ellison, who is backed by Bernie Sanders? Or will they go with one of the other progressive challengers, somebody like Sam Ronan? We don't know what direction that they're going to go. We'll find out soon enough. Now, of course, Webb has chosen a bit of a direction, I believe. And he's going to sort of explain that now.
The Democratic Party over the past 5 or 6 years has moved very far to the left. You know, when you can't have a Jefferson-Jackson dinner, which was the primary, celebratory event of the Democratic Party for years, because Jefferson and Jackson were slaveholders, they were also great Americans in their day. Something just different has happened to the Democratic Party.
You think they're too focused on identity politics?
Well, I think that the message that has been shaped by the Democratic Party has been shaped toward identity politics, and they've lost the key part of their base, the people that And my family history goes back to the Roosevelt Democrats, the people who believed that regardless of any of these identity segments, you need to have a voice in the quarters of power for those who have no voice. And we've lost that with the Democratic Party. I'm not saying the Republicans have it, but
I was just going to say the center's been hollowed out. You could make an argument that the political center in both parties, because right now, if you espouse that and you were running for re-election, any Democrat were espousing what you just espoused, which is, you know what, look, essentially you're saying, hey, start working with him a little bit, accept the fact that he's president, you'd get primaried, and you'd probably lose.
Well, true.
Well, true. Yeah, and actually, I'm in favor of that. But look, let me get to some of his points that he made, right? Now, look, in there, he talks about identity politics. That's actually a good point. But let me go back to the first thing. The Democratic Party is too left? Doubtful. Are you fucking kidding me? Too left. Too far to the left. No. You're absolutely wrong about that. First of all, the Democratic Party is center-right. It's actually left behind progressives, despite the country being, on issues, more progressive. I mean, you go down issues by issues. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, raising the minimum wage, et cetera, et cetera. On economic issues and on social issues, most of the party is progressive. Most of the country is progressive. The reason the Democrats have lost so bad, especially in 69 out of 99 state houses, state legislatures, and 33 governorships, is because the Democratic Party has essentially given up on those states. They've given up in places where they could actually win if they appeal to people, if they appeal to regular working class people, through good economic policies that don't help the rich. They haven't been doing that. Now, the thing is that Webb actually sort of addresses that. But again, his solution and Chuck Todd's solution is, we got to go to the center. We got to go to the center. What does going to the center mean? It means going further to the right, which is exactly the wrong thing that you want to do. Now, again, look, you want to talk about the Democratic Party being too corporate, right? Being too center-right. Remember, the superdelegates went to Hillary Clinton, almost all of them, even though there were some states that were won by Bernie Sanders back in the primary. You had people like Howard Dean saying, I don't care, I don't represent the people, I represent the establishment. And here's the thing, the establishment is not liberal, it's not even really conservative, because of their stance on social issues. What the establishment is that they are incredibly pro-corporate, pro-business, tax cuts, trickle-down, deregulation. That is not liberal, that is not conservative, that is pro-corporate. Now, again, that does go to something that Webb touched on in that clip. That's when he said, quote, you need to have a voice in a quarters of power for those who have no voice, and we've lost that in the Democratic Party. Now, again, he says the Republicans don't really have a lock on that either. You've lost white working people, you've lost flyover land, and you saw that in election. What happens when people get frustrated enough and that they say, I'm not going to take this anymore. Again, he points out the problem, but his solution is not a good solution. Look, people voted for somebody who wanted to go against the establishment, who said they were going to go after the establishment, who ran as a populist. Now, you know who else ran as a populist and won? President Obama. He ran as a populist, governed as a centrist corporate Democrat. Now, again, you had Trump running sort of the same thing, but more of a right-wing populist, which means they did engage in a sort of identity politics as well. But I hate your identity politics is sort of the thing that they ran on. Neither of them were actually populists, though. And now, this is not to say that Donald Trump and Barack Obama were remotely the same when it came down to policy. However, Barack Obama did have policies that were a bit more popular than Republican policies. These were the center-right policies of let's be very moderate. Let's only give you just a tiny bit of change. Where Donald Trump, his change is regressive change. Oh, let's get rid of the minimum wage instead of raising it very slightly and then giving this very long timetable to get it up to even somewhere close to a living wage. That's what Barack Obama did. Donald Trump's like, let's get rid of it. Gone. Oh, you want to do health care? Get rid of it. Gone. Gone. And of course, look, again, Donald Trump ran on, he ended up running on a platform of alienating immigrants and Muslims. And of course, did appoint most of Goldman Sachs to his cabinet. So on some of the economic front, very right wing. So much for populism, right? No, see, the point is that, like, if the Democrats want to learn from someone, shouldn't be from Jim Webb. He correctly identifies some of the problems, but not the solutions. The solution is not to run to the center. The solution is to look at what worked. And you should look at Bernie Sanders. Now, for example, you could say, but Bernie Sanders, he lost. He lost. Well, look, this guy is a nearly unknown senator from Vermont. And he went up against the most well-known establishment-backed politician. Like, everybody knew who Hillary Clinton was. They knew what she did. On name recognition alone is probably one of the bigger reasons that she actually won this primary. I'll get to that in a second. But he caught a 60-point lead. Had everything against him. This guy who was a self-described democratic socialist, right? Socialism is that word that makes everybody scream for the hills. And yet he made a couple of mistakes in his own primary campaign. And again, nobody runs a perfect campaign, right? He didn't run a perfect campaign, but he ran a damn good one where he actually learned from some of those mistakes, from all those mistakes. And again, he got screwed by the establishment. Even with where he did mess up, he could have won this primary if the Democratic Party, the DNC, didn't put their entire body on the scale for Hillary Clinton and essentially screw him out of this whole thing. But my whole point is, you need to look at the successes of Bernie Sanders and how he reached out to the working class, to Trump supporters even, to independents, and of course, all the progressives. That's why people backed him, because he actually listened to people and had plans and actually fought for these economic issues. And it wasn't all identity politics like what Hillary Clinton was running on. And look, she ran on identity politics, but she also ran on zero change. Zero change, steady as we go establishment. That's not a winning formula. And again, on policy, you don't go further right. And again, you don't only run on identity politics. You also have to run on those economic issues because they also affect the black community, people in the LGBT community, Latinos, women. It affects people. You have to make that consideration as well. Hillary Clinton's platform was, we're going to have everything stay the same, even though people across America are still hurting. That did not resonate with a lot of people. Now, finally, interestingly enough, Webb did decline to share his vote in the presidential election. He said, quote, "I'm comfortable for my vote, and my vote is private to me. But at the same time, I will say that I did not endorse Hillary Clinton." Now, again, the reason that I bring this up is that, yes, okay, his vote is private, sure. I'm thinking he might have been a Trump guy. I'm just saying. Look, the irony here is that he's saying, let's go back to the center. Well, Hillary Clinton was the center-right candidate. She was a corporatist, which of course makes up the entirety of the center of the Democratic Party at this point. So again, Jim Webb completely missing the real problem within our system, while only identifying some of the real problems facing the Democratic Party. And again, calling for the solutions that aren't actually solutions. You do not go further right. That is not what the country and not what the people want. The country is more progressive, and they want progressives to stand up for regular people and enact policy that's going to help all Americans, not just the ones at the top, not what Donald Trump is doing, and not what Hillary Clinton would have done. So that's it on that. Got another Bernie Sanders related story. All right. Let me drink here. Now, Senator Bernie Sanders was scheduled to do a town hall today in West Virginia. However, according to the Washington Post, the event was strangely canceled at the very last minute. Interesting. And pretty weird. In fact, in a statement, Sanders said that a National Guard armory that had been booked for the town hall had decided to cancel without explanation, and that the network was unable to find a new venue on short notice. Now, this town hall event was going to be a Chris Hayes event on MSNBC. They're going to go through, they're going to do another town hall. Now, again, canceling seems a little odd, especially since there was immediately no explanation given. It's almost as if somebody is afraid of letting Bernie Sanders come and do a town hall in the middle of West Virginia. I mean, look, he did win the West Virginia primary, and he could have possibly beaten Trump if he were the Democratic nominee. Now, again, this particular county is actually a Democratic county that swung for Trump. Now, in a statement, Sanders echoed the sentiment of, hey, man, this is weird, by saying this. Quote, if anyone in West Virginia government thinks that I will be intimidated from going to McDowell County, West Virginia to hold a town meeting, they are dead wrong. Strong statement. If they don't allow us to use the local armory, we'll find another building. If we can't find another building, we'll hold a meeting out in the streets. That town meeting will be held. Poverty in America will be discussed. Solutions will be found. Damn. Now, what's interesting, of course, about McDowell County is that it's the poorest part of West Virginia. It's got the highest rate of drug overdose in the state and the lowest life expectancy of any county in the United States. Wow. That is a disaster. Being hit by the heroin epidemic. Getting hit by poverty and unemployment. Oh, it's a disaster. Now, of course, in November, Donald Trump won by 74.1% of the vote in that county. However, in the Democratic Party's primary 6 months earlier, Bernie Sanders won 55.2% of the vote. Well, it seems like people there were looking at the establishment and going, hell no. Things have got to change. We've got to change this thing. And look, we'll vote anybody who's going to challenge the status quo. Hillary Clinton was the status quo. Bernie Sanders was not. Donald Trump presented himself as not the status quo, even though that's kind of what he is. Now, again, Bernie Sanders, populist. Donald Trump, full of shit. Now, Sanders said, quote, I want people to see firsthand how poverty leads to terrible despair, and that in reality, how it is a death sentence for many. In McDowell County, one of the most poorest areas in one of our poorest states, people are now living shorter lives than their parents. Unemployment is sky high. Drug addiction is an epidemic, is at an epidemic rate, and the schools lack adequate funding. It is high time that we as a nation heard from the people who are impacted by this crisis and determined the best way forward. So that's Bernie Sanders' statement on this. Now, again, going back to why they canceled it, well, we don't really know, because not a lot of people are talking about why. It says, now the article says, while the National Guard and new Governor Jim Justice, fascinating name, have not talked about the cancellation, people with knowledge of the event say it had been planned for weeks, and they were told belatedly that the venue could not host a political event. I smell bullshit. Major. Look, if they had this thing planned for weeks, odds are they didn't just book it in the last night. No, they probably had this thing booked for weeks in advance. And then suddenly they're told, oh, we can't do political events. Wait, you didn't realize that Bernie Sanders coming to speak at a town hall on MSNBC, you didn't realize that was a political event? Come on, nobody believes that. How stupid do you think we are? Of course it's a political event. And of course they knew. Again, I think it's probably because somebody wants to keep Bernie Sanders silent. Because he actually is a populist, he actually is a progressive, and he actually has solutions. And look, maybe the people in that county, Maybe Jim Justice don't want to hear it. Maybe he'd rather lose the state and county to Republicans than to actually hear a true progressive's message. Remember who was also from West Virginia? Joe Manchin, the most right-wing Democrat that we have. Maybe, I don't know. That is my speculation on that. And maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But right now, seems sad, kind of shameful. But thankfully, this is getting a lot of press. This is in the Washington Post, right? This is a guy that I don't agree with often when it comes to the establishment, Democratic politics, Dave Weigel. So look, hopefully this gets enough press. This guy and Bernie Sanders can find another venue to do this. Or if he holds this damn thing in the street, that would be awesome. I will love to see the look in their faces. Bernie Sanders holds this rally right in the street, right in front of the DNC building. You want to do this? Let's do it. Love to see that look. Hair would be on fire. I'd love every second of it. But again, weird circumstances from this supposed would-be town hall. So again, I hope we can see it. I hope it happens. Poverty is a huge issue. The drug addiction rate in these counties is a huge issue, and it's something that needs to be talked about. And I'm glad at least somebody out there is trying to have a conversation. Okay. Let's move on. Let's talk about the alternative to Obamacare. Now, for the last 7 years since the Affordable Care Act had been passed, Republicans have been promising an alternative plan. This plan will be faster, better, stronger. Oh, wait, that's the $6 million man. Actually, no, they promise it will be cheaper and have more choices and freedom. Whatever that means. Freedom, I don't know. But maybe, I don't know. Freedom and cake. Except that there is no cake. And there's a Republican senator that just admitted this. Now, this is Mike Lee. And he was talking to KHN's Julie Reuner about this. About why they're pushing the repeal of the ACA so fast without a replacement. Now, they say it's because if people saw the Republican alternative, they might not actually like it. Mike Lee says, quote, "There's a lot less agreement about what comes next. If we load down the repeal bill with what comes next, it's harder to get both of them passed." Meaning that if you actually put what's in it in a bill, in the same repeal bill, people will get a chance to look at it. We'll get a chance to talk about it on these different shows. I'd certainly talk about it, what's in the repeal, and I've seen and talked about some of the stuff that they plan to replace it with. Those are things that are not popular. Now, again, speaking of popularity, full repeal, not exactly popular. Just 18% of people polled by Quinnipiac last month want the ACA fully repealed. 47% want some of it repealed, likely the mandate. And 31% say, leave this shit alone. Just leave it alone. It's fine. Don't get rid of it. Look, I'm one of the people that actually say, let's change some things. Let's make it better. Let's put in a public option, for example. But that's me. This is a Republican bill, so likely they're not thinking that way. But anyway. Now, again, Lee says he's in favor of a full repeal. He really wants to just get it gone in one shot before having a replacement. However, if you can't have a full repeal, he'd at least take a partial. At a minimum, Lee said, Congress should immediately pass the bill it passed in 2015 that was vetoed by President Barack Obama. Now, that partial repeal would have eliminated the expansion of the Medicaid program for the poor, as well as all the insurance subsidies that help people afford coverage and the taxes that pay for that program. So consider this, right? See, those aren't the unpopular parts of the ACA. Those are actually popular. The unpopular stuff, the mandate, would still be there. But the subsidies, gone. Medicaid for the poor, gone. Some of the taxes that help pay for those subsidies, gone. For example, if they get rid of those taxes that they use to base the subsidies from, Well, the richest 400 households would get a tax benefit of $7 million a year. That's why they're doing this. They want to get rid of those taxes. And for Medicaid for the poor, they don't care about poor people. They don't give a fuck about poor people. They don't give a fuck about people on Medicaid. Gone. They want to get rid of it. And in fact, Lee says, quote, if we can get something more aggressive, then great, but we cannot make progress until we first repeal Obamacare. Now, what is their plan? Well, there's really nothing cohesive at this point, but a lot of the ideas that are coming out are equally bad. For example, health savings account. Health savings account. Basically what you do is that you take your own money, you put it tax-free into a health savings account. And when you get sick, you use the funds from that to pay for your care. Now, oh, that's great if you like break your finger or something. But if you get cancer, wiped out, gone. And then you're screwed, you're SOL. Then, of course, but that's okay. Their other plan is to put in a small tax break for people. So you can save a little bit more of your money and you can put it into that health savings account. Again, you get cancer, SOL. It can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to treat cancer. Regular people don't have that lying around. Even with that small tax break and that incentive to go and put money into a health savings account. It's ridiculous. It wouldn't work. And of course, there's nothing to pay for the promise of keeping people with pre-existing conditions covered or allowing people with pre-existing conditions who don't have insurance currently to get that insurance. That whole Bernie Sanders versus Ted Cruz town hall talking about the future of the ACA, well, Ted Cruz kept saying, oh, don't worry, they can keep their health insurance if they have a pre-existing condition. Well, you didn't say anything about anyone who didn't have health insurance and has a pre-existing condition. Because if you drop all those requirements that that insurance companies cover people with pre-existing conditions, if you already have one, and there are some crazy things that are considered pre-existing conditions, by the way. One of them includes pregnancy. It's crazy. But, you know, hey, if you've been pregnant, man, pre-existing condition, we're not going to cover you. That's insanity. So, again, no, there's really no cohesive plan, and that actually works in their favor. Because if you're vague, well, then you can keep whipping people up for the repeal first. Yeah, repeal, get rid of it. It sucks so bad. The ACA sucks so bad right now. We got to get rid of it. When you whip people up, then it's a good chance that they might not ask, but what are you going to replace it with? You keep the focus on repeal, nobody asks about replace, except there seems to be a lot of people asking about replace. But, again, their replacement plan likely to be worse. And why? It's because the Affordable Care Act was their plan. They don't have anything better up their sleeve, anything that actually works up their sleeve. And look, again, the ACA has its problems. After all, it is the Republican plan, as I keep mentioning. Because I have to keep mentioning that. This was Heritage Foundation. This was Mitt Romney Care. But again, even with the problems that the ACA has, what they have coming, the ideas, far worse. Health savings accounts don't affect the poor. Block granting Medicaid will cut millions off needy Americans who can't afford insurance. Giving a tax break to help you get health insurance, again, that doesn't do diddly shit for the poor. Not at all. And look, the final irony about this is that many of the most conservative places that actually vote for Republicans, like Mike Lee, are poverty-stricken areas, for example, like in Appalachia and small rural towns. Those are the people that are going to be hurt worse by the repeal. But again, the Republican Party as a whole doesn't really care. They want to get rid of it so that their donors can save millions of dollars a year in taxes. This is not about choice. This is not about freedom. What it is about denying access to quality health care for poor people at the benefit of the very wealthiest Americans. That's not what the American people want, It's not what the American people believe in. The Republicans know that, and yet what they're going to do is they're going to sit and lie in your face, to your face, in meetings and at town halls. No, our plan is so much better, so much better. No, it's not. If it was, it would be called single payer, because that is the better alternative plan. Why? Because it works for every other single industrialized country in the world. If it can work for them, why can't it work for us? And the answer to that is that, well, it wouldn't work because people would no longer be able to profit off healthcare, because that's what they believe. They believe they should profit off your healthcare. These other countries that do single payer, it works for them because they don't believe that. They believe that healthcare is a right, a human right for everyone. And until we change that belief, we're never going to have a single payer system. So we've got to start changing hearts, and we've got to start changing minds. We've got to start making people realize that health is a human right. It's the only way we're going to win. Okay. I don't know if I have time for the voter fraud story. I might not. Well, shit. We'll have to save that for tomorrow. Anyway. So I'm going to wrap up the show here. I want to thank everybody for watching, for going around the nation with me today. Appreciate it. Love you guys. We'll be back tomorrow, 3 p.m. Eastern, right here, TYT Nation, live. You can tweet me at TYT Nation. You can go and like us on Facebook, facebook.com/TYT Nation. Make sure to subscribe. If you haven't already, like the video. We'll have the clips up later today if you've missed any part of the show. So you can go ahead and like those clips and share them with your friends, with your family, with anybody who's interested. So all of that. All right, everybody. Again, thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you guys tomorrow. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, TYT Nation.